Pokemon is a game that has a lot of items. Some of them are one use, some are held and work at the end of a turn, some work when your Pokemon is hit, and some are consumable and take your turn after meeting certain conditions. The most useless items in the entirety of Pokemon are X items. X items are one-use items that take up a turn, like a potion or revive. These items provide various buffs for your Pokemon while in battle. Here you can see each one and what they do. In previous games, they allowed one level of stat change to your Pokemon for exchange of a turn in battle. Now they have a stat change of +2 since Gen 7, but still use your turn. They cannot be held and used by a Pokemon, they are not allowed in competitive VGC Pokemon battles, and they are not allowed in the battle tree. Maybe they are, but only as held items, and they don't work like that anyway. So why are they in the game still? Are they useful or important? That depends on the player. For beginner players, it can be used as a good way to quickly power up your Pokemon in a pinch to beat a hard trainer or Titan Pokemon. It's a good way to get boosts without knowing how stat boost moves work. Let's talk pros and cons of X items. Pros: +2 stat boost depending what you use. Guard Spec gives no stat changes to your whole party for 5 turns from enemy Pokemon. That's it. That's all I can think of. Cons: you waste a whole turn. They're consumable. They can't be used in competitive or battle tree. They're not a passive or held item Pokemon can use on their own. Probably others. Let me know in the comments. I think the main reason I find them so useless is because there are other and better items and even moves that can give stat boosts, sometimes to multiple categories. For example, look at all these stat boosting moves in Pokemon. Belly Drum takes half of your health but maxes out your attack. Agility boosts your speed by 2 stages. With moves, you can even reduce an opponent's stats, like Baby Doll Eyes reduces your opponent's attack by 1 stage. X items can't do that. They're limited to just boosting your own stats, but at least with moves, you can boost 1 or 2 different stats by multiple stages, and it can be used in all aspects of Pokemon. The battle tree, competitive, casual. On top of that, you can pair these moves with held items to make strategies to make your Pokemon better. Like using weakness policy that boosts attack and special attack after getting hit by a super effective move, and pairing it with a move like Calm Mind that boosts special attack and special defense. This gives you a huge advantage because these held items can give you an extra boost and not waste a turn, so pairing them with the move can be a really effective strategy. There are a bunch of combinations, but you get what I'm saying. X items aren't bad per se, they're just kind of useless. I feel as if they also take away from the learning of how to play Pokemon. Using and relying on these X items takes away from understanding how Pokemon works in regards to moves and items. If they weren't included, it would force players to learn how to use these stat-changing moves and items more effectively, and not want a scapegoat. Although, Pokemon's difficulty isn't so bad as to really need to use X items anyway. There are 2 main options that I think of: make them better or replace them. Let's focus on the first. Making them better. The answer here is pretty simple. Make them held items to be used in all aspects of the game, make them consumable, 1 use per battle, and make them have a certain activation condition. For example, you give an X attack to your Pokemon to hold, they get hit with Charm that lowers the attack by 2 stages. Passively, the X attack activates and boosts your attack stat back up 2 stages, so that way you had no net stat losses. Basically, it would work like a citrus berry, where you lose a certain amount of health and it would activate and heal you back up, just with stats. This solution means they can be used in all aspects of Pokemon, encourage the use of using stat moves, and show the importance of using held items. You could also have it that after being held for a certain number of turns, it gets consumed and you can get a +2 stat change depending on which you equip. Another example, you give your Pokemon X defense. 3 turns pass, and X defense gets consumed, and their defense gets boosted by 2 stages. Now let's look at option 2. Replace them. I had a few ideas for these, and I don't know if they already exist. And the first one I had was the Move Capsule and Special Move Capsule. These capsules are based solely on typing, what type your Pokemon is, and what type the move is. Let's talk about the Move Capsule first. The Move Capsule is a held item for a Pokemon to use. When a Pokemon holding this item is hit for the first time, the Move Capsule takes the type of move and stores it in the capsule. By doing this, any move that is that type, the Pokemon holding it takes 1 stage less damage by that type of move, which I think is 1.5 times less damage. So let's say your Pokemon is holding the move capsule. The first move they get hit by in the battle is Swift. The move capsule captures that type and stores it. Anytime that Pokemon gets hit with a normal type move, that move deals half damage to that Pokemon. This is an interesting concept that has some risk. It can be very helpful in competitive Pokemon where you know what teams you might go against or what moves you might get hit by, planning for that. In casual play, maybe not so helpful, besides going against a gym leader who mainly uses one type of move. Now for the special move capsule. It is not what you think. It is not in regard to special moves specifically, so we could workshop the name. But I was thinking you could buy these and give them to a Pokemon, and there are different ones per type. For example, a grass, fire, or water special move capsule. I had 2 different trains of thought. The first one, you could give them to any Pokemon, and like the move capsule, any move of that type you have does 1 stage less of damage. So if you have the grass special move capsule, all grass moves do 1 stage less damage. This kind of eliminates the point of the move capsule though, and you can just choose what type you want, so I thought maybe that wasn't the best idea. My second idea was that you can only equip the type of move capsule to a Pokemon that it would be super effective against. Essentially, you can only give a grass special move capsule to a Pokemon that are weak to grass moves. And of course, there would be one per type in Pokemon to cover all the typings. So you'd give your Pokemon that's weak to grass moves a grass special move capsule to hold. It gets hit by a grass move, it takes half damage for that grass move and all other grass moves. This option, the super effective only one, would be great for new players in a casual story playthrough to help protect against certain gym types, but also have insurance for all of your Pokemon. They would be able to be bought, but for a high price. It would also be decent for competitive, but not too much, since in competition most people don't really go on super effective moves, more so on stat buffs and stuff like that, I think. My next item idea to replace X items is Mirror. If held by a Pokemon, any stat changes or status changes done to the Pokemon holding it will be reflected to the Pokemon who used it as well. For example, your Pokemon is holding the mirror. Enemy Pokemon uses Will-O-Wisp to burn you. You get burnt, but so does the enemy Pokemon. Another example, your Pokemon holds the mirror. The enemy Pokemon uses Sand Attack to lower your accuracy by 1 stage. Your accuracy gets lowered by 1 stage, but so does your enemy Pokemon's. This would not work though for moves like Ice Beam that would freeze you or Flamethrower that could burn you. It would work for moves like Sleep Spore or Thunder Wave, so status moves or stat changing moves only. It would also work if the enemy Pokemon used Swagger on a Pokemon holding the mirror. The Pokemon holding it would get confused and the attack raised by 2 stages, but the enemy Pokemon using it would also get confused and have their attack raised by 2 stages. I think it would be a very versatile item, specifically in competitive play. It would make for really interesting scenarios and setups, and if you factor in that some Pokemon like Steel or Poison types can't be poisoned, it could make for some really interesting Pokemon battles. The closest thing I could find, and I may be wrong, is the Mirror Herb that mirrors any stat increases of the enemy Pokemon. The Mirror would not be able to get stat boosts for moves that weren't used on the Pokemon holding it though. If the Pokemon holds the mirror and the enemy Pokemon uses Bulk Up to increase its own defense and attack by 1 stage, Pokemon with mirror do not get these boosts since it was not hit by a stat changing or stat increasing or decreasing move. Sheesh, that was a long explanation. I have one more example to replace X items, and that is the Twin Bracelets. This item is again a held item, can be used in all environments, but doesn't have to do with stat changes entirely. They are 2 items that look the same, and you give each of them to 2 Pokemon. When one Pokemon faints during battle, the item activates at the end of the turn and gives you a choice. You can either leave the Pokemon that fainted out of the battle, or you can exchange the life of the other Pokemon that holds the other bracelet to revive the one that just fainted. This means the Pokemon whose life you're taking would faint instead, but you can continue to use the one that just fainted, keeping them in the battle. Oh yeah. And if the Pokemon that fainted had stat changes and you choose to keep them alive, they keep their stat changes. So I guess it does involve stat changes, so my bad. If you choose to not revive the fainted Pokemon, their stat changes do not go to the Pokemon who holds the other bracelet. I don't think this one needs an example. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This would be a good item for a team that is based off of one particular Pokemon. You can have insurance that if by chance that Pokemon falls, you get a chance to revive it again. It would also be great for competitive and casual play for sure. I could even see it being good for challenges like Nuzlockes to keep your stronger Pokemon alive. I understand all of these would need to be workshopped more, and some may be hard to implement and code into the games. I think Game Freak should just get more involved with the community and get feedback about what they want. I understand Pokemon is a kid's game, and I understand they want to make money as a corporation, but they would make more money and appeal to a bigger audience by making the games more detailed and intensive, whether by making the battle system more strategic with new items, or by making the game more difficult for older demographics. Either way, Pokemon has become extremely stale, especially the battling in it. I think a good first step is to overhaul the items to make gameplay more interesting. There is a ton of potential for new and innovative items that could be added to the series, by replacing some of them or making the existing ones more useful and versatile. X items may not be the worst items in Pokemon, but they are the most useless. In my opinion, at least. What do you think about X items in Pokemon games? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See ya.